Growing up as a granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor, it was something that I kind of always knew, that he had survived the Holocaust. You know, I don't remember the first time that my mom or my grandfather sat me down and told me the whole story, but rather it was just something innate that I grew up knowing and learning about, as my grandfather was very active and very involved in both the Holocaust survivor community as well as the education community in different museums. And, you know, as a kid, he used to come to my school and share his story of surviving the Holocaust. My grandfather was privileged to write a book about his story, a memoir called Destined to Live. What I knew about my grandfather was, you know, he always used to say he survived the Holocaust with a bit of luck, faith, and his education. And the reason he said that is his education was very instrumental in a way of him helping, you know, being able to survive the Holocaust. He was born in 1913 in a small town of Poland, Krasny, and he was a teacher in a technical high school, an engineer school. And when the war broke out around 1939, he was actually enlisted in the Polish army. And after that, he was injured. Because of his education, he was kept back and kept on as an engineer instructor in an engineering school. So that really enabled him. And one of his students at the time gave him false Aryan identification papers. And from there, it's a crazy story, some of hope and unfortunately a lot of death. He had a whole family and a wife and a baby that were perished in the Holocaust. He was in hiding at some point. Then he was unfortunately in a work camp in Janowska. And the way that he was kind of able to escape this work camp was that he was, because of his engineering background, he was asked one day to leave the camp to fix a radio. The SS officers knew that someone said, don't you know how to fix a radio? So they brought him out of the camp to fix a radio, and while he was out of the camp, for that short period, he actually learned about, you know, this terrible task that workers in the camp were being forced to leave the camp daily and ruin Jewish cemeteries, desecrate Jewish cemeteries in order for the tombstones to be used as gravel in the work camp. So since he was able to find out about this, as he tells the story, one day he kind of got in line with some tall men, slipped in between some tall men, and was able to exit the camp. And from there, you know, his story goes on, but he was actually in hiding for about 10 months in a building until the end of the war. So somehow, with a bit of luck, managed to survive this terrible dark time in history. This is, of course, the happy part of the story, where JDC comes in and really provided my grandfather with a new life. It was the end of the war, and you know, he had gone back to his building and tried to reconnect with anything that he could reconnect with. And he had one friend who told him about this organization that was trying to connect people with relatives. He writes about in his book that one day a food package just arrived, and you know, it said from the Joint Distribution Committee. And after that, JDC was actually able to put him in touch with his one living family member who was here in America, actually his older brother that he had never met. JDC helped him to get on the first boat called the SS Marine Flasher, leaving Europe with Holocaust survivors. About the same week that I accepted my job here at JDC, I was going through some papers that had come from my grandparents' house. I was going through a pile of really what we had deemed garbage. I pick up a booklet and I see big letters, AJDC. And not really till I did a double take, until I looked back at it, I really realized it said the American Joint Distribution Committee. And what I had was actually a piece of JDC archives. I almost threw it out, and I was so glad I didn't. So I felt as if it was a message when I found this, that, you know, I was taking the right steps and that my grandfather was proud. He always wanted to know where I'd end up working, and always said, there's a need for you, and always, you know, was so, he put such importance, obviously, on continuing the Jewish tradition and being there for the Jewish people. So that's how he led his life. And so when I brought this, you know, document into the archives department, and I actually shared it with Linda Levy, it kind of led us to the conversation. I don't know why I hadn't looked yet in the JDC archives. I just started here, and I don't know, I didn't really think about it yet. Linda Levy was actually the one that came to me and showed me what happened to be the boat list from the SS Marine Flasher that, of course, had my grandfather's name on it. So we knew that he had been on this boat carrying the first boatload of Holocaust survivors from Europe to America. I wasn't aware he was actually with his niece on the boat, and on the list it says his name and it says his niece's name. To really see his name in writing was earth-shattering. And to have that actual physical thing, it was proof, and it was evidence, and it was just a piece of archives. It was a piece of personal archives that I was able to share with my family, and bring it home to my mom and my dad. And this is my mom's father, and she was very, very touched, to say the least. And it was pretty amazing to see almost a piece of his story come to life, a piece that was about hope and was about a new phase in his life, and really a new life that JDC gave him.